I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Brendon, thanks for joining me today. I know it's late for you from Europe,
It
and
is a bit late, but it's all good. Wouldn't have missed it.
I appreciate it. And I just want to get right in. So you're running Tyto, right? Not
Correct.
Tito.
No,
Tyto could go either way for people who don't know. So you're running Tyto PR after a long stint as the CEO of Hotwire PR.
correct.
So you
Yeah,
founded. So Tyto is your founding. Is that right?
correct. Yeah. I mean, I joined my previous agency 3 months after it started, so I kind of did a fairly epic 17-year stint with my previous agency, and then I kind of reached one of those milestone birthdays, and I'd always kind of had it chipping away at me. Did I have it in me to create a business from scratch? Even though I'd kind of done every single job in the business in the previous company, I had that overhanging me. And I kind of hit one of those milestone birthdays and decided now is the moment. And yes, we created Tyto.
And on LinkedIn, it says, if I remember right, it's like PR without borders. Is that right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
talk
I
about
mean,
that.
I think like there are kind of pros and cons of starting a business when you're a little bit older.
You're stuck on this age thing. You mentioned the milestone birthday and then
Yeah,
a
I
little bit
know.
older.
Well, yeah, maybe I've just got a chip on my shoulder. For most of my career, I was kind of had to deal with looking much younger than I was. Now, probably I'm kind of maybe look at the age that I am. But I guess really where I was going with that was I'd kind of been part of building a really successful international agency, and the benefit of that is you kind of get to see what works, what doesn't work, and you kind of mentioned that our operating model PR without borders. I think what I've kind of seen is that Europe is a uniquely challenging place for technology companies to build and manage their reputations, in that you have multiple different countries, multiple different languages, and traditional agency models, which kind of either were kind of like larger global agencies or smaller in-country boutiques in every market. Both of those kind of models created structures that had silos, that were inefficient, that were quite fragmented. And I thought there was a better way of approaching that from
But
a
could you
client
have fixed
perspective.
that as the CEO of a firm that you're already running, right? Like you're already in charge of the firm. How much power do you
Yeah.
have to make that correction?
Well, I mean, I think what's kind of interesting is when you start something with a blank sheet of paper, it's much easier to innovate and
True.
disrupt. So kind of just to give you an example, our agency has employees spread across multiple European countries. We have capabilities across multiple European countries, but we don't have bosses of countries. We operate as one team. And so
I
as a
got it. 'Cause, yeah, a lot
consequence,
of
yeah,
places have like their bureaus or their P&L heads, and they run the
exactly.
XYZ location office. I
Exactly.
got it. Yep.
And so as soon as you create bosses of different countries, you kind of give someone a reason to care about their own domain. Whereas actually, we run this kind of very distributed, flexible model with no borders. And the consequences of that, it actually feeds through to the way that we service clients. So we think about clients very holistically, very agilely, in a very agile way. And so the way you structure your business is very integral to the service that you offer. And that's very difficult to do in an established business.
I like what you say. As soon as you give them this power of the border, right now they care about it, right?
Totally.
It's
Yeah.
like, what do they say with numbers? Like once you have, like a metric, then you can manage
Mm,
around the metric. It's sort of like once you give them this
yeah.
authority, then you create these fiefdoms, right? You create
Yeah.
P&L fights, and
Yeah.
who's going to get allocated what revenue.
Exactly. And then I think the other interesting aspect of a borderless work environment is that, like, most of our clients are in the technology sector. They take a very borderless attitude when it comes to identifying and finding the best people to work
Right.
for. I
Right.
would say communications historically has been quite rigid, quite conservative in how they think about talent and borders. However, what we've done in our business is we've hired people from all across Europe with, like super, super, super bright people who, in the old world, as I see it, they would have been constrained and kind of put into a box. Like, you're the Spanish expert in social media or something like that. Whereas within our business, we kind of take talent, skills, brains, and kind of create a much bigger platform and a much greater opportunity for those people to showcase their talents, which again is one of the advantages of this kind of borderless model.
Do you think it works because you said you're focused on technology clients? If you had different kinds of clients, could you get away with this?
Yeah, I totally think the same challenges are inherent in other business sectors. I think probably technology companies kind of can see this because they can identify with some of the constraints of a very rigidly bordered kind of model. But I think it's applicable to all sectors. I mean, ultimately, one of our clients is a company called Remote, is kind of very much at the forefront of enabling people to recruit people anywhere in the world. And one of the CEO's favorite expressions is that, what is it? Opportunity is kind of, what is it? Sorry, this is really bad.
Must have been real catchy.
Yeah. No, it was kind of, oh yeah. Talent is distributed, opportunity isn't,
right,
traditionally. But because of the kind of the opportunities opened up through remote work, you've got a situation where opportunity is distributed. And so therefore, if your talent is distributed, it's much easier for employers to tap into that talent. And equally, it's a better opportunity for talent to tap into opportunity.
You started this approach prior to COVID.
Correct. Yeah, we started in 2017. And the reason why I started our company like this was because I wanted to create a multinational team that worked as one across borders with one totally integrated culture. And I knew that if I put people into offices and silos, they would work against that. So actually, one of the things I think is kind of interesting around the whole remote work discussion is a lot of companies think about remote work in kind of this quite binary way, which is that we have got some employees in the office, we're going to now make them remote. Remote work for us was about much more than that. It's actually about enabling an entirely different business model of pan-European PR that didn't exist before. And it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for our remote model, because everyone is in the same boat. It doesn't matter where you're sat in Europe. You still are very much an equal part of the company, an equal part of the kind of driving the culture.
How much did COVID make you feel like, okay, I made the right decision here? Because now everyone has to be remote. We've been doing it for a couple of years. We've gone through all the kinks, and everyone is forced to do it now, but they don't want to do it and they don't know how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of these people that kind of like, I see the benefits of remote work, and it's kind of integral to Tyto. I'm pretty open-minded that for some businesses it doesn't work. Yes, obviously we were kind of at an advantage when COVID came along because we'd kind of rehearsed all of this. We were very intentional about remote work, but I wouldn't say I felt smug about it or anything like that. And I'm still a big believer in it. I mean, like post-COVID, but pre-COVID. And for us, as I say, it's just integral to our business model. And it's kind of very opt-in. So we're not in a situation where we've got half of the employees kind of are working remotely because they had to because of COVID. It's actually everyone opted into our model. And that I think is kind of different. It means that everyone's very invested in it. They chose to join and work this way. And I think that's very different from working in a company, where it's kind of a bit of a pick and mix of people for different. Yeah.
Where are some of the most interesting far-flung places that you've been surprised where you've hired employees from?
I mean, I say I wouldn't use the word surprise, because I think, like I mean, one of the things I love about my job is I love recruitment. I love kind of meeting more and more bright, incredible people. And I've always kind of always kind of like being able to spot people in sort of in different environments, and thought, wow, they seem like they'd be like a really bright and great addition to our team. So rather than kind of say I'm surprised, I'm not. But we've got people kind of spread all across the UK, from the bottom of the country to the top of the country, across the middle of the country. We've got people in the north of France, the south of France. We've got people in multiple cities in Germany. We've got people in, parts of Italy. We've got people in different parts of Spain. We've got people in Bulgaria, so kind of it's very kind of, I guess, I don't know we use the word random, but like it's kind of pretty spread out. I mean, what I would say on a kind of a human level is one of the things I do like about remote work is I think people get to a point in their life, and often they have to compromise between a career and something that's very important to them from a life perspective. That might be they want to buy a house, or they want to get their children into a good school, or they want to move back home so they're close to their family. And starting Tyto, one of the things that I observed is you kind of got people that had to make big compromises. They either got the good school for their kids and then they kind of took a crappy job, or they kept the good job and then they had to do this horrendous commute. So what I like about remote work is giving people the opportunity to have their cake and eat it. And I'm kind of a bit of a have your cake and eat it guy. I kind of quite like to be able to do everything.
I love it. Now, I'm just curious to hear, because obviously here at Bospar, it's the same thing, right? It's remote.
Yes.
It's all over the country. I'm at home right now. You're at home right now. So it's fascinating for me to hear your approach doing the same type of model, but over in Europe, where you're dealing with different, national barriers and different rules, and it's not the same country. So it's even more challenging.
And I mean, what's kind of quirky about our business in a kind of very geeky way is we have legal entities in different countries that employ people, because you have to have that.
Right.
Like you need to have, if you're employing people in Germany, you need to have a company in Germany. So kind of under the bonnet of Tyto, there are all these different entities, but internally we don't talk about them. So they're kind of things, they're the enablers, but actually we kind of we only talk about one team.
Is there a country, and we'll move on from this, but two last questions. Is there a country that you find, I don't really want to hire people in that country because those politicians make it too severe to do business, right? When you set up that entity, it's too many rules, too many regulations, and they sort of tie your hands.
No, I mean, I think you kind of got to go where the client demand is. And the majority of the client demand is in UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, and parts of the Nordics. I mean, that's kind of, so kind of there's, I think you have to take a client-centric viewpoint on these things. And
do the clients care where the people are, or is it a language barrier? Why is the client
well, I mean, what I mean, sorry, is I take that back. So actually, in terms of hiring people, that's kind of like that people might have a certain skill set which might not relate to their location. But what I was saying about with clients is that although we've got this distributed model and we have people doing different kind of jobs, we need expertise in certain countries. You need kind of an on the ground.
Oh, the media expertise, the trend expertise.
Or the language expertise if you're dealing with content. And, you kind of do need people kind of in close proximity to where the journalists are in that particular country. So when I say driven by client demand, I mean, our hiring is about hiring the right people to deliver the service that the clients need based upon where their business focuses. And it's usually around those kind of five kind of
so much of this it revolves almost like hospitality, right? I know
Mm.
there's a side of you that is inspired by that, and sports as well.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a side of this that you look at the Premier League. Those are people from all over the world, right? And they're
yeah,
playing on the
yeah,
same
yeah,
team, and national boundaries don't matter. Hospitality is so client driven. How much do
yeah,
you look at those kinds of things to inform how you make decisions in a totally different
yeah.
industry?
I mean, I think that sometimes you've got to really step away from your own industry to get inspiration, like I think if you just look at your own industry, it's a very narrow perspective. It's kind of a bit boring, and the likelihood is that kind of the breadth of innovation that you're going to bring is going to be it's going to be pretty limited. Whereas I think I get a lot of inspiration from external experiences, and I'm going to go in search of them. But so you're kind of thinking about hospitality. I'm kind of a bit of a foodie, and if I can, I'll go out and eat nice meals. And what I like about food, for instance, is kind of just the level of kind of creativity that goes into taking the same ingredients that you could put on two different plates, but one of them can be kind of like an artistic masterpiece, and one of them can just be something that I could probably knock up at home. And kind of like the creativity and innovation involved in that. And then all of the kind of presentation and storytelling that goes around that. I think, and then the service, like the idea of being treated really well, and with like with such a high level of care. All of those things, I think, I think PR, any kind of service company could draw some inspiration from that.
I like your point about the ingredients are the same, the end result is very different. And all of a
Yes.
sudden, I was thinking about food, and then all of a sudden at the end, you tied it back to pyramid. Like, oh, of course, because think about how many great stories.
Yes.
The ingredients are the same.
Yeah.
Great story, terrible story, but a
Yeah.
few tweaks, a few narratives, a few ways of putting
Yeah.
it together. And now you've
Yeah.
got a front page, big feature, big
Yeah.
coverage. Same story all of a sudden gets you nowhere because you didn't
Yeah.
really
I mean,
craft
it's
it
how,
the right way.
like they bring out the cheese board or the cheese trolley at the end,
Right.
and they tell you the story around each cheese. Then it just comes like, oh, would you like some cheese? It's kind of like it's very, very. There's kind of a storytelling around it. So I draw a lot of inspiration behind that, and also I like again, these people are artists and entrepreneurs, people that create these kind of new sort of groundbreaking restaurants. So that's kind of my food
That's
restaurant
you.
inspiration.
You're also an artist and an entrepreneur, so you're the same.
I mean, on a very low, probably the artist bit, pretty low level, but yeah, I'll take a little bit of that. But then in terms of sport, the coach of the team that I follow has this expression, which is that I want to be the best team. I don't necessarily care about having the best team. And it's kind of that whole thing that you can have the most talented people in your team, but if it doesn't actually operate to its full potential as a team, then you won't be as effective. And so I really like that whole idea of kind of building a great team culture, a great team that works well with each other, and knowing that that's kind of it's kind of like always a work in progress. Like it's kind of like, how can you get more from this engine, which isn't about kind of getting people to work harder, but it's like being thoughtful. How can you get this group of people to work more effectively? How can we get the most from the individual skill sets that exist within this group of people? And that is really difficult.
So how do
Like
you do it? What do you
well,
do? What's the secret here?
I think it's so many different things. Like I don't think it's any one thing in particular, but I think it's kind of first of all having an appreciation of all the talent that you've got, like, and really recognizing that, and being kind of quite alert to how you might be able to use that. I also think it's kind of just having a very flat, open structure whereby people feel like that you want them to contribute and that they can contribute in different ways. And I'm just kind of a big believer in being kind of very open and transparent. It's a bit of a cliche, but I think the more open and transparent.
But in what sense? I'll cut you off. Open and
Yeah.
transparent in what way? In terms of your personal struggles in life, or in terms of I will tell any employee about what everyone else is doing, about how much how money they make, like revenues, like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what transparency are you willing to share, and what are you not willing to share?
I mean, I think really as close as you can. And I don't think necessarily this it doesn't sort of like go into every single minute area of how a business is run, but as close as you can, it's about creating total alignment. And in order to create total alignment, as far as possible, you want everyone to be on the same page as far as stuff's going on. And that requires a degree of openness and transparency. So whether that is like each month we send our employees a financial newsletter, and it goes into, is it like literally is about 3 or 4 pages long, talks about how the business has done in the last month. And so that kind of creates that as a consequence of making that people aware of that, and how it kind of feeds into incentives and things like that, it gives people a sense of ownership. So that would be kind of one illustration of it. Another illustration would just be kind of, you're struggling with things, you're struggling with challenges, kind of just putting them on the table. I'm a big believer in that kind of a problem shared is a problem halved, and actually kind of just acknowledging stuff like this isn't going very well, or we need to work on this, and kind of making that a joint project rather than something that 1 or 2 people have to wear on their shoulders. That I'm a big believer in that, like just kind of being on the being kind of like on the same team.
How do you balance your day? If you think of yourself as the coach,
Yeah.
but in a job like yours, there's a lot of things that you yourself can do. You can bring in business. You can go talk to reporters. You could write press release. Like everything that is done, theoretically, you could do, but you shouldn't necessarily be doing. So where do you draw the line on what you actually do versus what you're managing?
Yeah. Well, I think I've kind of learned from, I think I'm kind of a bit of an efficiency freak. So I do think about this kind of stuff, like as in I try to be quite deliberate about where I spend my time. And probably one of my guiding philosophies is around enablement. So where if I can spend an hour or 5 minutes or whatever doing something which is going to enable someone else to do something of consequence, I'll focus on that, as quickly as I can, knowing that will kind of basically start a domino effect of kind of results, impact, etc. So I tend to kind of focus on things that are enabling for other people. Probably I would say that is the bulk of the job. And then there's kind of probably about 30%, which is really focused on stuff that I want to do and that I think that will kind of maybe move the business forward.
What's an example of that?
Well, an example of that might be kind of like thinking about a new like a new product or service, that I think is, or it might be, starting some conversations with people who might be future hires, or it might be kind of capturing some views that I've got into an article, like it's kind of just things which I would classify. I always think that there is loads of discretionary stuff that you don't have to do. So there's kind of like the stuff I mentioned, the enablement stuff, I kind of think most of that I have to do it. If I didn't do it, the business would kind of run slower. But I would think, but I was going to say the kind of discretionary stuff is the stuff that I don't have to do, but it's the stuff which I think maybe creates a level of momentum and pace.
In your experience moving up the ladder, right? You said you were there 3 months into the hot wire experience, and you've done every part of the job. And I know people they love so many things, but there's one thing they don't like, right? So for some people, it's I don't like writing press releases, or I don't like pitching, or I don't like the new business calls, but I love everything else. Like but there's one thing they don't like. What's the one thing that you really try to avoid doing yourself because you just don't like it?
I don't really like project management. You know, like I like coming up with ideas. I've got no problem. I'll do the most mundane kind of data oriented stuff if I need to. I've got no problem. I'll write, you know, I love writing. There's very few things that I don't enjoy, but I don't like fiddly project management, you know, like
managing trackers and all this stuff.
Trackers and kind of lots of intricate parts. Like I just feel like it's almost like you're kind of like running through treacle or something. It just doesn't. I like to move a bit quicker, and I don't think I don't think I'm the greatest person in that.
And you know, you say that because that never occurred to me. Because I typically haven't done that. But I agree. There's people that love doing that. There's people they want to sit there and really think through all these little steps. So let them do that, and then you avoid that.
Totally. Yeah.
What trends are you seeing in Europe right now? Obviously, the war is happening. UK's had leadership changes. You know, we hear from, you know, the US, we keep hearing about Brexit, and it's not even clear. You know, from the Western side, it's like the US side, it's like, so they did it. And now I guess they're dealing with it, and blah, blah, blah. And there's different regulatory issues. So like if you're a bank, you're dealing with the UK regulator, you're dealing with or a tech company, and you're dealing with the European regulator. So this is what we see in the news, right? It's sort of the war, the impact of Brexit, and general global tech downturn, layoffs, all of that. What trends are you seeing in Europe, including just how you're dealing with the media?
Well, what's kind of interesting is we have developed a bit of our own kind of like little insights tracker around for this kind of thing. So when we kind of created Tyto, we wanted to have a sense of who the most influential people were in the tech industry in Europe. And so what we've done literally over 6 years is every year we kind of produce this report. It's called the Tyto 500, and it looks at the 500 most influential people in tech in the UK, France, and Germany. So
Tyto 500. So let's just make sure we got
Tyto 500. Yeah,
Tyto 500. The most influential people in tech in UK,
France, and Germany. So we look at the top 500 in each of those 3 countries, and we've been doing that for 6 years. And obviously, it's not the same 500 people each year because we've got like an objective scoring system.
And these are media people, or these are the actual tech executives, or they're both?
Well, we kind of we cast a very wide net. So it's politicians, it's you know, technology executives, it's venture capitalists, it's academics. So it's very broad.
I gotcha.
And anyway, so we do that every year. So that gives us a kind of an insight into what you know, who are influential. But then what we've done on top of that is if you think about that group of people as a bit like a cohort of very influential people in tech, what we've done on the back of that is we have created this thing called the Tyto Relevance Index. And what we're doing is we're looking at those influential people, and we're trying to understand from a technology perspective, and sorry, from a technology issues perspective, but also from a social economic perspective, what are people talking about the most? So what's driving the share of conversation among the tech community in UK, France, and Germany? So for instance, taking the kind of technology trends, you probably won't be surprised that 40% of the conversation is around AI and machine learning. So that's kind of by far and away the most dominant topic.
Whereas a year ago it wasn't, right? That's a thing that's new from last year, right?
Then if we were to look at so what we've done, we basically look at the conversation, and then we look at what is kind of taking the largest share of the pie. And we do that also with socioeconomic topics. So if we look at socioeconomic topics across UK, France, and Germany, the topic with the most share of conversation is climate change. The second biggest topic, that was kind of climate change, is about 20%. The second topic is geopolitical conflict and instability. That's similarly just under 20%.
So that's most of it right there. 40, 20, 20, 80%
correct.
of it is
Exactly.
AI, climate, and the war. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you asked about Brexit. That's obviously quite a bit in the rear view mirror. Less than 2% of the conversation is about Brexit. So you can kind of, so that is on our website. Go to the tytopr.com, Tech 500 Relevance Index. And the whole reason we created that was that if you think about that, it's quite a good proxy to let you know about what people are talking about, and therefore what's the canvas of opportunity for you as a business. And therefore, if you're going to orientate your message or your storytelling into a particular area, probably you've got a greater chance of getting kind of airtime and coverage if you're focused on where the most of the conversation is. Now, I guess you could be a bit counterintuitive on that and say, actually, not many people are talking about that. Maybe we should talk about it. But it gives you an idea of what is the most relevant from a conversation perspective in Europe. And we look at that on a pan-European level, but you can also drill into individual countries.
So that's a great approach, because you're right. The media tends to do what they've been doing the day before. So if they're talking about AI yesterday, they'll be talking about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if you have a way in, right? If your company does 10 different things, but part of it's AI, maybe you should talk about that. That's probably a way in. Right.
Yeah.
Or climate change. It's AI or climate change. That's what's going to get you coverage. Exactly.
Yeah.
I forgot the other fourth topic, but maybe that's just here in the tabloids, is anything that goes on with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. That's like the big England talking point over here, but not tech focused.
No. Yeah. My wife is a big follower of the royals. I'm kind of a little bit more, I think I'm a bit more of a Republican. So I'm not really a big one for celebrity gossip. So I probably am not the right person.
I assume they don't crack your Tyto 500 in England.
Funnily enough, some of them have actually broken in the past years due to they're quite heavily more interested and involved in business, but not at the moment. No, they're not in there at the moment.
How do you prepare for, at least from the US side, what looks like a recession that's either coming or has already started? And typically these things move together across the globe. Are you seeing real signs of clients saying, hey, we love you, but we got to cut budget either a little bit or a lot of it or all of it, or we got to wait a few months? How are you prepping your staff and new business pipeline to get ready for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess in terms of kind of like culturally, how do you prepare for that? Well, I think you kind of need to be honest and transparent with information as to what's going on. So absolutely, we're seeing the same kind of challenges that you refer to in terms of people having to operate with kind of less, make cutbacks and things like that. And so that obviously has a knock-on consequence for our business. So first of all, the first kind of part of preparing is really being transparent about that. Then I think it's about lining up what your story is, like why do clients need us at this time? How can we make a difference? And our PR without borders model, we believe, delivers better results, but it's also 30% more efficient than a traditional agency setup. So kind of we've got quite a compelling commercial kind of proposition for the market. And then probably the third, and then a third thing is, I think the analogy I would kind of use is in a market like this, which is kind of moving slowly, it's a bit like being at sea in a sailboat with no wind. And therefore kind of when it's windy, the wind will drive you forward. When it's not windy, you kind of need to figure out a different way to drive your own momentum. You need your own engine basically to do that. And that's what we're really focused on, is kind of like being our own engine, trying to do loads of innovative stuff like the Tyto Relevance Index, trying to do amazing work that, like our clients want to sing our praises around. But what you can't do in an environment like this is kind of just move with the tide, move with the current. You have to find ways to create momentum for your clients and to create momentum for your business. You have to create your own energy, because without it, if you're at sea, you'd starve. You wouldn't have any fresh water. So you kind of need to kind of be that catalyst.
I love the way you say that. I love the sea analogy, right? If you're not moving somewhere, you're just going to end up stuck there.
You're just going to drift,
Yeah.
You might drift into the rocks if you're not careful.
Anything you look back over these last 6 years, you would do differently, a lesson learned that you feel like, okay, maybe that was something I won't repeat in the future?
It's a really good question. It's not one that I've given any prior thought to, but what would I have done differently? Gosh, part of one of my life lessons is, I think we all make mistakes. You make mistakes and they cost you something, right? I know everyone likes to talk about, failing's good, but actually, to be honest, I think success is making more good choices than bad choices. And
60%. If you can be 60-40, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so you want to make more good decisions than bad decisions. Anyone that says you want to kind of fail all the time, I don't think that's a path to success. And I would honestly say, I can't think of really anything that I would have done that differently, to be honest. There's nothing I really look back on and beat myself up about, or we could have done this better, or we could have done that. I think probably actually, just on a personal level, maybe I would have actually created my own company earlier.
That was going to be one of my questions. One of my questions was going to say, do you wish you had done this sooner?
Yeah, I think so. It's a kind of a double-edged sword. If you become quite successful and you get a decent income from that, and I've got 3 kids, you've got children, you've got all these responsibilities, walking away from those things feels very scary. When I created my company, I sold my house, so I had plenty of money to hire some people and not worry about my mortgage and stuff like that.
So where did you live then?
Well, I rented a house, right? So
so you went from owning to renting, but all of a sudden, that's a big leap of faith. That's a big risk to take personally.
Well, it was a big risk, but I guess it was something that made me feel more comfortable, in that I wanted to start with a team of people. So I hired a bunch of people before I had any clients, but I wanted to start and move quickly. But in hindsight, maybe I could have done this earlier. I would definitely always, if someone ever came to me and they were thinking about starting a business, I would definitely push them in that direction, because I think totally do it sooner. Yeah.
That's impressive though, that risk taking, hey, but you can say in a way it made the company less risky. I want to have a team. It's I'm going to take this personal risk, but it's going to be professionally less risky for me to start with a team than to try to do this by myself.
And also it just meant that I slept better at night as well, because, if you don't have money, I kind of hardly paid myself anything for 2 years, because I was paying other people, etc. And you're building up the company. But I could kind of live with that because I had some money in the bank. Whereas if I didn't have money in the bank, I probably would have, it would have stressed me out.
So fascinating. Brendon, this is amazing. I love the data approach you take too, with the relevance index and the Tyto 500. So hopefully listeners can go check that out. And just your approach, right? This pan-European model, not having these different silos in different countries, and your whole approach in the good times and the bad times. Brendon, I really appreciate you coming. And I know it's late night for you, so you have plenty to do and your kids must be at home. There's a lot. So I appreciate you spending some of your evening time with me. Thank you so much, Brendon.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.